Hey guys, so for this video, we are going to create a custom React component to prevent the browser from falling asleep. And this is going to be useful for using it together with the timer component so that if you're on your phone and you have the timer running, it doesn't allow your device to fall asleep. Because if we see here, if we bring up our timer component, if your device has a setting of falling asleep or dimming the display after 30 seconds or a minute, this timer component wouldn't really work that well, where the user would have to keep pressing their screen to keep the screen from falling asleep. So first thing we'll do is we'll create a custom hook for this, just to keep the code cleaner in this file. So in the app tsx component, we'll open up the directory and create another file right next to this that we will call use wake lock. So use-wake-lock.ts, and there's no x because this will just be, it won't have any JSX in it. So we'll open this up here and we'll import React so we can use some of the hooks there. And what we'll do is we'll store the lock that we get just locally here inside of this module. This will limit it from being used multiple times, but for our use case, we just want to use it once. If you wanted to create multiple spots where you call this hook, then you would have to store how many locks you need and manage that. But for simplicity, we'll just have one. So we'll use let so that we can reassign it later, and wake lock. And the type of this is going to be this wake lock sentinel or null. And we'll initialize it to null. And then here's the hook that we're going to export and use in our other file. We'll call it use wake lock. And this will just need one parameter, which is, do we need to stay awake? So we'll call it exactly that. Need to stay awake. This will be a Boolean. And so we'll just have a React use effect in here. And the dependency here will be the need to stay awake. And so the first thing we can check is if we don't need to stay awake, we can just return out. There's nothing for this hook to do. Otherwise, what we can do is check if the browser has permission to get the wake lock. So one thing is you have to be using HTTPS for this to work. So if it's not available, we'll print something to the console and exit out right away too. So if there is no navigator.wakelock, we'll return out. But before we return out here, we'll want to send a message to the console. So the console.warn, and if we'll check the protocol here, so window.location.protocol. If it's equal to HTTPS with a colon, if we go into the browser here and just check the window.location.protocol, we'll see that list the protocol followed by a colon. So if it's HTTPS and wake lock is not defined, we'll just log a message saying wake lock API is not available. So we're not sure why it's not available in this case. Otherwise, we'll put a message that wake lock API is only available in HTTPS protocol, like that. And we'll save that, and then let's go to the app TSX component and use it. So we should get a message that it's unavailable because we're in HTTP at the moment. So we'll do the use wake lock, and we'll pass in is break as our need to stay awake. So anytime that there's a break, we should make sure that we're using it to prevent the screen from falling asleep. And then we save that, and we see here we're getting this message here that it's only available in the HTTPS protocol. So let's go ahead and go back to where we're running Veet. So we'll close this for now. Go into your terminal, your other tab. We'll close this and we'll run npm install and then d as a dev dependency. And then it's at veet.js/plugin and then basic SSL. And this will allow us to have an SSL for when we are running in dev mode. So once that's running, we can open up the Veet config file. So find that file, and we'll want to import from that plugin that we just installed. So we'll copy this line and modify it. We'll call this basic SSL, and then this was from plugin basic SSL, and then we'll add it as one of the plugins here, basic SSL, and we'll call that function. So we can save this, and then we can quit here, and then we can run this dev with a -- host there, and we can see we now have this option for HTTPS. And so over here, if I refresh this, it shouldn't work, but if I come in here and add the HTTPS protocol, your browser might give you a warning about it. We'll go ahead and accept the risk and continue. And now we no longer are getting that warning about it only working in HTTPS. So with that, you can close the Veet config file. We can continue to develop out the wake lock hook. So once we get to this point, we know that we need to stay awake, and we know that the wake lock API should work. So we can use navigator.wakelock and then request, and this will return a promise. So you could await this, but using it with a React hook, we'd have to wrap this inside of a function inside of this use effect and then call that function, because you can't make this hook here at the top level be async await. So instead of doing all that, we'll just use the promise API. So we'll use .then here, and we'll pass in the first function is what to do when things work out. So we'll get a wake lock. We'll call it WL here, just so it doesn't conflict with the one we defined in the module. And all we're going to do is set the wake lock equal to WL. And then if it doesn't work out, that we can provide a second callback to this function, to the .then. And this is the function to run when the hook or the request fails. So we weren't able to get a wake lock. And if you look at the documentation, you can see there's a few different reasons for this. It's if the document isn't actually visible, or if the battery on the device is low, or there's a few other criteria that would prevent it from falling asleep. So if it didn't load, we'll just do a console.log here, and we'll say unable to acquire a wake lock. And then we'll actually grab that error that was given to us, and we'll log that out as well right away. So we'll do console.error, and we'll pass in that error. And then the last thing we need to do for this hook is pass a cleanup function. So whenever this hook whenever need to stay awake changes, we'll call over here, we'll do wake lock, and if it is defined, we'll do release. So to allow the browser to fall asleep again, or to dim the display. And here, I guess this was changed to a const. So we'll change that back to a let. We'll save this here. And let's add a log message for when the wake lock is acquired. So we'll copy that one and we'll change this to acquired wake lock. So we'll save that. And then if we come over here, so we see there's no wake lock yet. As soon as we start the break, we acquired a wake lock. And let's go back to the app TSX component. We'll make this timer be a little bit briefer, so we'll change it to 5 seconds. And that way we can see that, we'll refresh this, we acquired a wake lock, and then as soon as the break is over, they both go away, and we should have seen, all right, let's add another message to release the wake lock. So released wake lock, we'll save that. And then we'll start the break again. We acquired a wake lock and the break is over when released it, so the device can fall asleep again. So we can use this alongside our timer component to make sure the device doesn't fall asleep while the timer is running down.